Coming up on the Up and Up.
The whole thing was like, oh, well, you're selling a sexy product, your pitch deck pictures aren't sexy enough, and we're like, why the fuck do we have to be? And it's also, we do it as a protective thing, right?
That just the whole term pleasure needs to be redefined because it's not only about sex.
However, we know somewhere in our bodies that sex sells, right? We think about sex work, we think about audio, erotica, etc. We know in our bodies that it should sell. So then the question is why isn't it selling?
Hey there, risers and thrivers. I'm your host, Janine, and this is On the Up and Up. Here, we've created a safe space to get real, make connections, and share stories that matter. No gatekeeping, no filters, just the truth. Welcome to On the Up and Up. And before we jump into this episode, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could just take a second to like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite streaming and social media channels. Also, a huge thank you to our partners at Jane and the Jam, who kindly hosted us for this amazing conversation. Now, to this episode. I'm super excited to introduce you to a very new, very special format that we've just introduced called the Taboo Table. These episodes bring together a group of founders to unpack the often unspoken, sometimes controversial sides of building a business. For example, answering questions like, how much should you really pay yourself as a founder? To topics like today's, which dives into what it's like to build a business in one of the most stigmatized industries out there, pleasure and sex tech. Joining me at the Taboo Table today are four brilliant minds who are not only challenging societal norms, but also creating innovative, empowering products in the space. First guest on this episode is Yasmin, who is the founder of heyyoli. Then we also have Rosanna and Avelina, who are the co-founders of LubeLab. And last but not least, we have Lex, who is a pleasure researcher and founder of Modality Group. So with that being said, let's dive into the episode. The term pleasure, it's something that's supposed to bring us so much joy, so much satisfaction, and yet we treat it like a dirty little secret, like it's a taboo to enjoy pleasure. So my question is, why does the startup and tech world treat pleasure like it's a taboo?
I mean, the question is whose pleasure, right? Like they don't treat men's pleasure this way.
Yeah.
They get funding, they're able to do what they want to do. ED meds get funding, Viagra gets funding, these things get funding, right? So what is taboo? Taboo is women's pleasure, right? Because women aren't supposed to achieve pleasure. Sex is not about pleasure for women. Sex is about women as a vessel for pleasure for men. And so I think that obviously that is expanding, and we're seeing waves of innovation in that space, and the definition of pleasure is also expanding. But I think in its origin, it wasn't meant for us. Period.
I think men are afraid of women that have pleasure.
Boom.
Because obviously, with sex toys, with the industry expanding and changing, I think there's less and less need for men or for women to be in relationships or to be dependent on men financially or pleasure-wise. If you think about the history, it used to be that it was thought that women also had to orgasm to be able to get pregnant.
Mhm.
And so it used to be a much bigger thing until I think our friend Freud came along that was like, oh no female orgasm needed for procreation. And then it was
Thanks,
cut it from the
Freud.
history
Thanks,
books.
I did not know that actually.
Mm.
Fascinating.
But what I find kind of interesting is because a part of me is a bit shocked that we are still here at this point because it is 2024. I feel like more or less
2025.
Oh girl, what?
Welcome.
I told you my new year started off a little slow, so mine started February 1st. But I just find it really shocking because it feels like in so many areas of our society and in life we've progressed so far, and yet for whatever reason when it comes to pleasure, it's a space where why are women still being treated this way? And this disconnect between the pleasure for men versus the pleasure for women, or for someone who's outside of this realm, it feels like this should have already been solved by now. Is this really still a question? And why is the tech scene taking so long to catch up? Like, have you had any inkling within that? within your work in this space?
Again, it's mostly just men in the tech scene. Also in the startup scene, I think it's a lot of just male startups. And yeah, I mean, I think it's still, there's a gender data health gap, there's a gender wage gap, there's a gender gap. And I think that's obviously also in this industry just super clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a desire to bridge it. And I think for all genders, there's a desire to bridge it. As things shift from like, I don't know what the shift is from and where it's going, but like specifically, people want to give pleasure to their partners. And I think that that's just real. When you think about the education side of it, I think there's just like not enough accessible education about what's real, what's fake, and what's desired. And people go to porn to try to find the solutions for that. And so like, there's already kind of like a huge question mark on how do I give pleasure? What is pleasure and what do I want in general? And then shame and the other things as well, for sure. But then there's also like tech is about money, right? And people want to see that there's actually a return on investment or a return on innovation for these products. And to date, the sex space hasn't really been able to prove it in terms of their innovations. However, we know somewhere in our bodies that sex sells, right? When we think about actual sex, we think about sex work, we think about pornography, we think about audio, erotica, etc. We know in our bodies that it should sell. So then the question is why isn't it selling? But I think it's the capitalist piece that means that people don't see the point of growing it, even though the potential intuitively should be there. So there's some kind of gap between where we think we should be going, where we are, and like this like resource gap in the in between. Like no one really knows just yet. I mean, I have theories, but like I think that's why we haven't solved it yet. And then just like society and like culture and fear and taboo.
But I find it really fascinating that you say that, because when we talk about pleasure, we're talking about well-being and we're talking about health. We hear this whole craze around health tech. I mean, your company is really about pleasure, well-being, taking time to take care of yourself. So these things are also forms of self-care and they're also health related. So I don't understand how it doesn't naturally flow within the whole health tech hype that I feel like we had for a good 2-3 years as well. Like, where is this disconnect happening?
Yeah,
How has
but
it
I
been?
also think that just the whole term pleasure needs to be redefined because it's not only about sex. Sure. This is also kind of the issue I would say that most investors have in mind when you talk about pleasure, because they just don't think further in a way to listen to it, what is behind it. And that pleasure is such a big word and has such a broad variety, so that there also needs to be much more education on that. And they open up their minds and really have a closer look into these startups and what's happening there.
Yeah. But how's the reception been then for all of you working on the topics of pleasure? I mean, first of all, how'd your family take it? But then also, what is the reception when you take it on a professional level to ask for funding or grants? How are people reacting typically?
I would say my experience is quite good so far, especially also from my family side, and like also when I'm talking to people, like really strangers in the club, on the streets, like whenever there's always a day when I end up in a conversation, but it's more curiosity, but also it's super interesting when you start talking about pleasure in the whole variety, like how people open up once they feel kind of safe, because also conversations around pleasure are so rare, unfortunately. So there needs to be these spaces where you really can open up and talk about it. And so for me, the experience is quite good so far, but I still definitely see that it is a taboo, especially when it comes to some investors who just say like, oh, that's not my field of interest.
I find that crazy. Because, I mean, it's something that everybody wants. Like, if we talk about a market, a sizable market at that, pleasure.
Everybody wants and everybody does, right? I mean, if you look at also just like you said earlier with porn, the clicks and the numbers on the website, everybody's looking at porn, everybody's having sex, whether that's solo sex or partnered sex.
Sure.
And whether that's other forms of self-pleasure or group pleasure, there's just this huge juxtaposition between over-sexualizing or like this over sexualization of women's bodies, of, you know, the porn industry, but then actual, if it's about health, somehow there, like, the shame comes out. And I think that's why, because people do it like secretly or shamefully, and they're not at peace with maybe their sexuality or their sexual needs, or just a huge lack of education.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're here. And interestingly enough, I think similarly for us, all of the people that we've spoken to in our family and friend circle, everyone's so positive and just so supportive. And everyone has the same issues and often the same experiences of also cultural shame or miseducation, having to unlearn so many things that they thought they knew about pleasure, how sex should look or feel like. And usually I think it's people, for us, where they act weird, where I think there's really like a huge lack of education and also some kind of compensation happening.
Yeah, I think also some men have to learn that they actually benefit too from the pleasure of their, especially in heterosexual relationships. When their women have more pleasure, they have more pleasure as well. So yeah, they really should make this topic a topic for themselves.
Yeah, but it's not entirely surprising, right? Like, because like you said, like pleasure is more than sex, right? Think about our relationship to food and how we try to
Look at this.
pleasure.
It's a real pleasure.
But people constrict food, right? They talk about fat shaming, they talk about bodies, they talk about all the other implications of nourishment, right? And there's like, it's a bigger issue around how we let ourselves be. And so I think that it's not so surprising that the sex space is struggling. I mean, so is the restaurant industry. So, you know what I mean? Like all of these appetite-based things don't necessarily do very well with the next trend or the phase. You know, now we're having like the alcohol kind of thing where you're like, we don't drink anymore. We now only drink water, but like whatever. You know, there's always these mindset kind of gymnastics that you have to do around feeling good, because feeling good is seen as frivolous, right? It's hedonist, and people are like, oh yeah, hedonism isn't capitalism, therefore we can't do anything with this.
When we talk about things like gambling, smoking, drinking, it is somehow more socially acceptable. Yeah, we have our trends right now where, I mean, I think more Gen Zers are a little bit less likely to want to drink as much as previous generations, but nevertheless, it's still not like taboo. Like, I can talk about how I had a glass of wine with everyone and everyone's going to act like it's fine, right? So I feel the impression that I get for you guys were like having businesses in the pleasure space is like there's this hurdle of educating and re-educating everyone on especially, I would say. And that seems like quite the challenge actually as a founder, because it's like now you have to educate people that there is a need for their particular product, which is an extra hurdle that other taboo topics, which to me, they are taboo. This is not really taboo to me. This is just pleasure, making yourself feel good. But they're in the same category.
So it's not really about that they don't understand this. Like, is there enough of a market for it, right? With gambling, it's addictive. It's like selling cocaine or like crack, you know, it's like, it'll beget itself a bit. What's the one you said gambling and
Alcohol.
But all of them, they're all kind of like also addictive. So these are things that kind of like you will keep coming to just because it hits that sensor. You know, I think for this one, and this goes back to what you said about like who's in the room, right? Like if the investors don't understand the market or who's using it, then they can't. Because like they said, oh, I have to ask my wife about that. You know, it's like, what, you never seen a dress before? Like you can't look at the data. What do you think the market is? You know, it's like that 50%, like as women, who do you think is buying? You know, whatever. And so I think there's like not a realization, well, there's a skepticism of whether there's a market for it. But then also when we talk to investors, so basically I run a data company. We do a pleasure think tank. We talk to investors. We collect data on pretty much everything because I want to own the world of sex data. This is my vision. This is my goal. But when we talk to investors, they say, okay, well, let's say I put money in. Who's investing after me? How do I get my money back? And there's no proof to that. And that's fair. There's no proof to that. So they think, okay, well, I don't know that there's enough people who would buy this because women aren't people. I'm like being a little bit facetious, but like, but, I'm like, I'm joking, but not joking.
Yeah.
Like, there's enough data has come out now that was like, our needs aren't really seen as well. But then also, pleasure's more than women also. So I don't really understand the calculus.
And that's where I'm struggling with it, because a lot of what you're saying, I draw parallels to, it's very reminiscent of when I talk to femtech founders.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of that. I think of the episode I had with Dr. Lene Brayboy. We were talking about ovum and fertility. And then we were talking about the severe lack of funding that goes to femtech and female research in general. I mean, research healthcare for men, no problem. Children, sure. Women, nah, questionable. And what I don't understand within the space of pleasure is it's not just women. But then at the same time, what you're bringing up now is also then the type of product. And so it makes me think, and maybe I'm being a bit too drawing a conclusion on this, but I'm like, is it because you're predominantly focused on women and you are women entrepreneurs that's making this a little bit more challenging?
I think it's like a double challenge. That's what I think. I think on the one hand, it's obviously being or identifying as a woman, already being taken less seriously because of it, or to be like, oh, two young women, they look inexperienced, we're not going to take you as seriously. We often say, like, if it was two dudes doing it, they'd just be so ahead. There was this one just preposterous startup idea on Die Höhle der Löwen, which is like the Shark Tank of Germany. And it was called Pinky Gloves.
What's the glove? I knew you were going to say the glove. It was the pink glove.
How did they end up on there? Two guys doing a product meant to help discard period products, and it's just a pink plastic
It's
glove.
a pink
That's
glove.
That's what it was?
Yes.
So you don't have to touch yourself. You can be even more like distanced from your own body.
Because they were disgusted with their girlfriend's periods, therefore, it's just like, wait, and they got money.
Yeah.
Wait, they actually gave the money on
Dead ass.
Yeah.
Like,
they got a backlash like in the media and so on.
Oh man, it was a scandal. It was a scandal all over LinkedIn, and I loved it.
So I think on the one hand, it's being women in this underrepresented space, having mostly or more male investors that don't understand the need or less. And then I think also the topic of pleasure and more in the direction of female health and just it being something that isn't as, like you said with the data, it's not as big yet, even though it is something that everybody does. It's not like the tobacco industry or the gambling industry where there's just decades of people being like, oh yeah, this will always be addictive. And I think we do have a weird relationship with pleasure, just like you said with food. It's something that people either overindulge in or restrict. And I think that's something that people have to learn how to, like, you don't have to deserve your pleasure. It's okay to feel pleasure, but it's also not something that'll help you run away maybe from your other issues or do like a dopamine high or just like having like a healthy relationship with pleasure. And I think that's where the education factor comes back in.
Fair. I think we focus a lot as well, like so far, on a bit of the taboo aspect and the sort of negative part of it. But I also think there's a real beauty in the fact that you all decided to start something in this space and really work towards redefining it. Hey there, it's me popping in really quickly to ask, what do you think of the episode so far? If you're enjoying it, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to On the Up and Up, and also share this episode with anyone that you think would also enjoy it. Now, let's jump back to the episode. So, Lex, you already shared a bit about your motivation for why you joined, like you decided to build and collect data in this space and everything, but I would love to understand what inspired you all to get started in this space, what motivated you to build here, because it's not an easy one. It's already hard enough being a founder.
Yeah, I don't think it's not going to be easy when you start. I think you think it's going to be fine. Like, it's going to be fine.
You just jump. You just jump and you just start. And then at one point you're just in there. You're deep in there. And then you just keep on going. Yeah.
No. You do something where you see there's a lack or there's something missing. So I think for us, it was like creating a product that we didn't think existed. And just thinking like, why the hell isn't this out there yet? And just being like, okay, what the hell? We'll just do it because we want to have it. I think other people would want to have it and benefit off of it. Or like a lot of missions and ideas and just wanting people to feel good in their bodies and feel empowered and to have access to good products that don't make you sick, but that make you feel good and that look good. So.
But like, what was the spark though? Like, I know for you guys, it started as a university project, but what was that catalyst? Was it a fact? Like I know for myself, when it came to the research, it was me seeing that the funding for women-led teams had gone from 3% to 1%. And then I was like, it's not possible that we have every form of diversity as a program available for accelerators and so-called grant programs, but yet the funding still sucks. And then that's kind of where I started the research journey and ended up creating a podcast. So like, was there a specific catalyst to starting in the space?
I think I just really like saw that there is also a lack between like the existing well-being routine and like doing meditation and mindfulness and all that hype around it. But in contrast, that there is the self-intimacy and like, sorry, that's not the right word, the intimacy and self-discovery. Self-intimacy. That there is like really a lack of body connection. Because also most people rely on their partner when it comes to sexual pleasure. And I think that was something that I experienced in conversations a lot when talking to people, that it's really like such a shame that we rely on someone else and that we have all the pleasure already in our body, but we just don't take the time to explore it and reconnect to our bodies. So that there is a lot of like meditation apps, and like a lot of people, all gender, meditate, right? And it's proven that it's super effective for your mental well-being, for your overall well-being. And the sexual aspect is just like, it's taboo in a way. It is. And so that's why with heyyoli, where we're really building the product to bridge this gap between the existing well-being routine and intimate self-discovery, that it is for all genders. And it's also so interesting that especially men or people who identify as male, they are really like interested in it. Like I have so many requests already for like, oh, if you do intimate touch audios for male, I would test it. So there is so much shame, especially about masturbation, and I don't like the word, that's why we're using self-pleasure. But it's like, yeah, for all genders. And this is something that also really keeps me going, just to not build a product only for one gender, because everyone needs more pleasure in their lives, and also to be proud of their pleasure and own their pleasure and not hide it.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful that you say that as well, because I grew up in a pretty religious household and background. So even the topic of pleasure, self-pleasure is such a taboo thing. Like you're like, oh, if I go in that direction, I'm doing something completely wrong. That is not supposed to be done at all whatsoever. And then I'm sure I'm not the only one. So there's many people who have to now unlearn this. And I think it's kind of a shame, because it also leans into the topic of mental health, right? Like if you're not in tune with yourself and how you're feeling, and you can't even help yourself feel better or find ways to find pleasure within yourself, how the hell are you going to expect a partner to do that for you?
And that's the problem. Yes, yeah, exactly. That's the big gap.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that you're building it for both men and women. For y'all, how was the catalyst?
I think for us, when we were in university, we were both single and dating. And I think we just kind of realized a lot of things about, products that were geared more towards men, or like marketed more towards men, whether that's lube or condoms or generally porn or anything pleasure related. And I think we just realized that like how many products just have really irritating things in there, especially for vaginas. So we definitely, like, our product at LubeLab is also for everyone, for every gender. But we just realized that most lubricants are just absolutely, they're made by men for men, not for women. And we wanted something that would make women especially feel empowered in their sexual pleasure and well-being, and not have to worry about things, not have to worry about a yeast infection or a UTI or any of that, but to just have something that actually protects their vagina and makes all the good bacteria happy, and also looks nice. So it doesn't have to be something that you hide in a drawer, but it can be something that you leave out on your nightstand and you're proud of it. And your family can come by and think like, oh, is that like a skincare product? I don't know. It's great for your skin. It's great. Absolutely. There's hyaluronic acid in there. Let's go. Put it on your face. Yeah.
Where did you got that glow from? Oh, that's LubeLab.
No, but I love
Also, you notice that lube,
is a very shameful topic still, especially for younger women. And
Yeah.
a good lube can have a lot of health benefits. It can prevent STIs or infections, and just give you more pleasure.
Yeah.
But most of the existing lubes have bad ingredients, so it can. So we wanted to create a product with good ingredients, and also to open up the conversation about around lube, and talk about the health benefits and make it a product not to be ashamed of. Yes,
That's real.
I think that's really all our mission, to really make sure that pleasure is part of the well-being and educate the world around that, because it's time.
It's time.
Yeah. I feel like I skipped the well-being part though.
I wanted to ask about you
because I didn't come from the well-being aspect, to be honest. I'm being completely. I think that is a ripple effect. I think in many ways the sex space is over sanitized pleasure, because it's actually the way you get funding, by being adjacent to healthcare. Because then it's like, oh, ooh, clean, pure, accessible. I'm like, or you could be fucking, and that could be awesome too, and that's cathartic, right? And then like fast forward to like my senior year of college, and I was like, I like sex. And my girlfriend at the time was like, you can just do that. And I was like, interesting. So then, fast forward, I moved to China, and I was like designing sex toys. And I originally wanted to do something that solved like erectile dysfunction or like lubrication issues, etc. Then I started designing paddles that had penetrative parts, because I'm really into form following function. Then I realized I don't have the skill set. I was a Chinese major at Yale, like not useful. And then living in China, I started going to trade shows. Then I started going to trade shows in Shanghai, which are like big health fairs with go-go dancers. Just like, wait, what is this?
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, it's a vibe. It's a total vibe. You'll see like Fun Factory there. All of the big players were there. And this was like 24. No, this would have been 2013.
Wow.
And then somehow I ended up.
We should go to Shanghai.
You should go. You should go. The Shanghai Fair is a blast. The Asia Adult Expo is a blast. And so then I started doing that. Then I ended up in business school, and I realized from these kind of like series of events that like people weren't actually making decisions based on data. They're making it based on like how they saw anatomy functioning. So it's like, this goes like this, and therefore we build toys and products based on that, which is like creative. Hey. So then in business school, I went to business school in Malaysia and decided to start data company. I felt like, okay, there needs to be more data for actual people's bodies and their actual needs to develop products that aren't existing already, that go beyond anatomy, right? And then somewhere in that time, I started researching sex work in Thailand and Vietnam and Malaysia with trans people, and sex work with human trafficking and sex work in Vietnam with like this like empowerment organization in Thailand. And then I realized, okay, so sex cuts both ways, right? So then the mission became, how do you amplify consensual sexual pleasure while reducing sex involved harm? And then we found a modality, and because data is the currency for empowerment, or for at least for education. And so if we can fuel companies building the cool shit, then we can just kind of be the kind of infrastructure layer for all sex business. So that's a meandering like.
But that's how you came to that topic.
More or less.
Interesting.
I mean, we started out in governance. So we like, because back in the day, sex toys were in the same category as like a yo-yo. They were all novelties. And in fact, child's toys had more regulations than sex toys. And so like you had this phenomenon where like people were losing butt plugs in the UK because, you're still a virgin if you have anal. And they were just floating up in there. And I'm just like, yo! There was no flared base. So you're just like, hey, you shouldn't laugh. Imagine being 16, going to the doctor, and almost like, I don't know where it went. It's just like, ooh, awkward. Right? And so like
that's why we need data.
Full stop. And the first ISO standard, I think, came out, I want to say 2021, 2022.
Wow, that's late.
Bingo. And it was, I think it was Wow Tech who did it before they merged with Love Honey. And it's insufficient. It's insufficient. And anyone else who's trying to reach standards, they're doing this weird kind of Frankenstein ISO like Jenga kind of situation where like Mystery Vibe, for example, I think uses like 5 or 6 ISO standards for mechanics, for healthcare, for body safety, and they're trying to like prove that they're doing the thing, but like the sex ISO standard There should be many. There should be one for lube.
Yeah.
There should be one for this. And I think there are some that you can like spin. And you see other cultures doing it a little bit better, right? Like you look at Japan, they have like one for internal, one for external, and then I think one for electronic. Then they kind of slot these things in here based on how they're used. But there's so much space. So like eventually maybe we'll get back into governance. That's where we started. But like it's a fucking green space. Yeah.
I was gonna say it seems like a blue ocean, to be honest.
That's
like,
the actual phrase.
Yeah, that's the I got you.
Thank you. Like you read the book.
I mean,
Education.
But no, I think it's really interesting because it's such a blue ocean opportunity, and also one of the reasons why I wanted to bring all of you here to have this conversation is because listeners of the podcast have asked me. They're like interested in building companies within the space, but they don't really know other people doing it. They're a little hesitant to get started. And so my question to all of you, like, it's great to know kind of what the catalyst was and what brought you to it, but what was the experience like with getting started? No. All right. Well, that says a lot. All right. Well, anyone else want to get started? We'll come back to
We
you.
can start. I think, I mean, we got lucky that we got into a startup accelerator relatively quickly out of university, and we got to try our entire idea within a safe university space. Get a lot of feedback. We could ask our professors about what they thought and test a lot of stuff, do some research, and it was all within our degree, so it felt very safe. And then getting into an accelerator right out of that really helped because we got some funding. We could actually work on the stuff, get the input, get mentors. I think that was one of our most valuable things, is to have people to bounce ideas on, whether that's friends, family, other people in the startup industry. My family, Rosanna's family, all of our families has got involved. All of us, we had, whether that's partners or dads or grandparents or godparents that were our interns almost, working with us, for us, kind of, that we could test pitch in front of.
Sweet. I love that.
And I think it takes a village, at least for us, and just a lot of good friends and family that also believe in it as much as you do. So I think that's my 2 cents. Get some mentors, get some friends, talk to them about it, and go for it if you can.
For sure. So what was your experience like getting started in the space?
I think for me it was quite interesting because I also don't have a business background. I'm also coming more from the communications, creative part, marketing part. And for me it was, I also went to an accelerator, which I think is a great experience in the beginning. But I think also it takes time once you start your business, what people's advice you listen to as well. It was super interesting for me to experience, especially, I could not even say male people gave me other advice than female, because it really depends on the people. Yeah. But yeah, there were some interesting recommendations, especially how to position heyyoli. Okay, you have to push it more into the porn industry, you're replacing porn. And I'm just no, heyyoli is not replacing porn. I'm not taking that. Yeah. I mean, what are we talking about? Yeah. Or that you really get pushed into one direction. Oh, you're femtech. No, it's not a femtech business. To really be clear about the vision. So this was for me kind of a big step to also really go back and trust my gut feeling and be that strong to also say, okay, thank you for giving me the advice. And then let's decide if I take it or not. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's really about believing in the vision. But of course, also hear the advice from the close circle, or also from strangers who also give great advice. But it takes a lot of courage. Yeah, 100%.
For sure.
And it's a super huge privilege to be able to build something, especially in Germany, where I would still say there is sometimes not that much support.
Sure. Facts. Yeah, that's a whole other podcast episode. Yeah. I'm going to throw it back to you, because when I asked the question initially, what was your experience like getting started? You kind of had a visceral reaction. So what was your experience like getting started?
Because it's sex tech, right? And so I started so long ago Originally, we didn't want to launch immediately. And so I was interviewing at a male pleasure company that I love in Japan, that I've loved for years, called Tanga. Fast forward a bit, I didn't get the job after 2 interviews and being flown out to Japan and blah, 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 blah. But they asked us to maybe do their market research for something or another. And so we quickly put the company together and started preparing to do the research. And then we went with a Japanese company. And so it just was like, okay, false start. All right, it's fine. So then we launched our company, and then so it was a series of false starts, a series of pivoting, a series of explorations, a series of interviews, trying to understand who we're actually doing. And honestly, we're still figuring it out. We started officially end of 2019, December 2019, got some clients, got proof of concept, tried to go the investor route. And this is kind of like where I'm getting at is like, we can't think like the normal players. Not necessarily, but like you have to kind of like just keep hustling. And so it's like, I don't know.
But for how long? It's exhausting
Yes.
at one point.
Yes.
Because everyone says it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We know it's a marathon. But for how long do you keep that energy going? Like for you, honestly, I'm curious because you've been up to this since 2019. Like, where are you getting the vigor and the energy?
You tap out and you tap back in if you want to. You don't have to go straight. And people always think, oh yeah, I can't fail, rest. I quit for like 2 years, got a job at a blockchain company, got 80K, and it's just like, oh, I'm going to live the life. And the job was so easy. I said, oh my God. Like, and for me, that's the privilege. The privilege is being able to go back into corporate. Because most people can't go both directions. Like you quit, and it's like, oh well, now I don't have now I have a gap on my CV. I quit, and I was like, oh well, I am privileged, and I know I'm privileged. So like we could talk about that on the other podcast. Yeah. But like I quit Modality, let it rest, let it marinate. Went and got new skills, new connections, new money, new vigor. Then I was like, okay. But at the same time, I'm asking questions. How can I apply blockchain to sex research? I was talking to them, just understanding identity solutions and how can we do like pseudo-anonymous stuff online. So like then I stopped and I said, okay, I think I'm rested. All right, press play. Okay, try again. Then I burnt out again, and then I press play, press pause. So it's just like for me, the mission still makes sense, and if it ever stops making sense, well, then it stops being. But it's like,
so the mission is just so strong within you
for me now, but it may not always be.
Fair.
Because I'm exhausted, right? And right now I happen to have energy for it.
But I think this is super important about like also breaking free, like being courageous to then also say like, okay, I don't feel it anymore. I, go back and find a job. But my experience also was that, again, coming back, it's a privilege. Especially one female investor that comes to my mind right now was like, oh, you're full-time on it. I'm like, yeah, but I have to see for how long again. Like it's such a challenge.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, like if you stop doing that full-time, it's gone. Don't do this. And like I was really questioning how the hell are investors thinking about like founders?
Exactly.
Like, do you really think like they're human beings? We need to survive. And especially once there is like, how should it continue if you have like such a break of like a lack of income in your lives, like.
And this is modeled on like the kind of Silicon Valley stuff.
Yeah, but it's more about like, okay, you have to go all in, but what's the price you're paying? And this is again something where I think investors, like you really need to find the right people because otherwise it's so toxic. And again, have the privilege, best case, to choose who gets on your cap table, because you don't want these people on your cap table, especially when you're building such a product that is so deeply personal and like so important, where you really have this big mission and vision. So this is also something I was like, wow.
And do you all see investment as the opportunity for you within the space, or do you find other ways? Okay, so it's a hard no for you.
One is a hard no because people suck. Yeah. Two, most of the industry is doing a lot more crowdfunding and grants and things like this. There's other types of money.
But grants for our for pleasure products is the next level thing. To be honest, like where do you?
If you've had one grant, you don't get another one. So like us, for example, after one accelerator, you're done for.
But if we're talking beyond like an accelerator, like sorry, you cannot live from that. No. Like that's the next big problem, and that's why I'm saying like there's so many grants like for you know, lots of lots of other industries and topics. But when it comes to pleasure, well-being, whatever it is, there is no grants. If you're not deep tech, if you're not like, it's, what do we have?
I don't know, healthcare.
Yeah,
But yeah.
Then they focus most likely on medical products.
That's also true. That's fair. That's fair.
So there is a big gap.
That's fair.
I mean, I've really come to the conclusion, I mean, my company's in the children's space, so obviously not the same, but we often get boxed into the DEI. You guys are a cute DEI topic. It's so sweet that you work on children's books. You do so good. Wow. It's so nice. And that's all, And like literacy, the fact that the illiteracy rates are dropping globally. In Germany, 25% of fourth year students can't read properly. But hey, it's nice that you do that. And I've really come to the conclusion now where I'm like, we get investment, fantastic. If we don't, my main mission now is just to make sure that the company gets revenue by any means necessary. So these are the things where I think for us in that space is not the same area, but it's just like, you know what? How do I get money quickly? And I'm bothering my team like a mad person now. Like, we need to start getting revenue. Like, that's what it is now, because I'm just like, I'm kind of over this whole VC investment thing. Yeah. Not necessarily. And I think for like what you're building, and I feel like for what you're building, for example, it's a database, is a technical infrastructure.
I'm chilling. I decided I'm not caring anymore. I like, if I don't know back, like I took the part about the enjoy your thing. I take that seriously. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I shall. You know, it's like, so then I grossly pared down, you know, what we're doing. And because really, why do you need money? It's speed, right? If you're not worried about speed and you're worried about quality, well, you have time, right? And you can keep your job so that you can eat and you can pay your rent and you could build a quality product that it scales over time, right? And that's just like, I feel like it's the poison. Some tools need it, right? Some tools need speed, period. You can't be sitting here twiddling your thumbs and like wondering, oh, well, it'll be fine. No, it won't. There's only one in the market, right? But I think that there's more space for slow building, right? If we don't believe the hype around startups. And that's kind of why I would just reject a lot of premises right now. Only because like I tried it that way where like I tried to go to investors and tell them the things and like I'm like, oh, it's easy. We're in sex tech. Everyone understands fucking data. It's not rocket science. We're building an ecosystem of data tools to collect and understand the kind of macro and micro positioning of sex business. So whether it be for governments looking at macro trends across countries, or from the individual user trying to figure out what the fuck they want to put on their body today, we will have it. Give me money. We need money. They're like, oh, well, consulting. That's a weird way to start because we wanted to get money in. Consulting's easy. You just sell someone a dream, you make a presentation, and you can sell magic, and then people pay you money.
Careful, the MBBs are about to get you. The McKinsey pays and BCGs.
I said what I said. Half my friend group went to BCG and McKinsey right out of college, and they all, it's a scam. It's a fucking scam, right? So you do that.
And podcast is getting canceled.
You know, come get me, bro. Like, I don't even care, you know? You want my email address, you got my phone number, come at me, right? So like, you know, then I'm like, oh, well, consulting, you can't do that. I'm like, but you say cash flow. So we're using this as an input to do a proof of concept.
Consulting is not scalable.
Not scalable. Yeah. Even though we're building a database that will eventually use machine learning to give recommendations for products to other people, then there's an affiliate marketing play right there built into the. No, we don't understand. I said, okay, because you're an idiot. This is like, you can touch this for a while. You must be a dumbass because you see this diagram you want me. I've been breaking out the whiteboard, be super excited. I had all the, the energy. Like, you would think I was 85 now. I used to look cute like this one. Now I'm fucking aging. I was like, I mean, literally, beginning of last year, I said, you know what? What if I didn't care anymore? What if I didn't make people feel comfortable? What if I just said, you know what? This ain't for you. You don't understand. You're illiterate. you need this product so you can read a fucking book. So once you understand how to read a business plan, we can come back and have a conversation. So now we're like, okay, look, we'll build a HBR, so a Harvard Business Review for sex tech. So we're building our magazine. Slowly we'll write things. We'll build our database. Slowly it'll grow. We'll build some AI because obviously, and then it'll slowly become a thing. And on the positive side, I'm meeting a lot of more angel investors, right? And so the way a lot of companies that I follow do business in this space is through angels. Recently, pro tip that I got for this is to look at family offices. I'd never thought to do that. I was like, this is brilliant because their time horizons are 10, 15, exactly. And I was like, interesting. So I'm hoping maybe one day I'll try to ask for money again.
And I find it interesting that you bring up that point. And you've been in the industry for a minute now, so that's why I think it's like I can feel the passion and the vigor. But I also wanted to bring it back to the two of you because you guys are relatively. I was gonna say y'all look like you're well invested. I'm like, they look like they sleep 8 hours a night. Like they don't look like they get hangovers. So I wanted to understand from your perspective, do you feel like that is the case as well, as if, okay, go look for alternative means of funding, or how does that look on your, or just get revenue in at this point, or what do you feel?
I think we've also had such a journey with it. Wow. I loved all of your points. I'm going to take notes later. We had the weirdest investor meeting just a while ago where it was also someone that didn't understand the vision, wanted us to change everything, wanted us to be sexier because she was like,
the sexualization in this space is fucking wild, hey?
Really? They wanted you to be sexier.
Yeah. That was like the whole thing was like, oh, well, you're selling a sexy product. Your pitch deck pictures aren't sexy enough. And we're like, why the fuck do we have to be? And it's also, we do it as a protective thing, right? To not attract the weird investors. And we have attracted some weird investors just through the product. But I think, yeah, now we're at a point where we're educating ourselves a little bit about like credits and loans. We did apply for some like business plan. It was like a competition where you can win some money as well.
Okay.
But also I think, yeah, our main goal is to make revenue as quickly as possible and keep talking to angel investors. I think there's a couple mentors that are checking us out or looking to see where it goes, and I think maybe would step in at some point. But I think, yeah, for us, it's like, I don't know. I think it's a lot of it feels like we're using the momentum we have. We have a great product. I think we have something really going for us. We've managed up until now to do it all kind of through the funding, through also support, obviously, from family. And then we're like, okay, I don't want somebody stepping in now that's going to tell me what to do if we've come so far. To really just go off of the revenue and hopefully attract the right people. And yeah, I think the sad thing with all the cuts in Germany is about like the grants, and that's like super shitty. And you really realize that as well. But I think, yeah, it's been very interesting talking to investors and VCs and hearing what they have to say.
Also, maybe it was kind of good for us to start kind of naive out of university, because we were also used to the broke student life and also like working on the side. And so you just thought, we have a great product, let's just try it. And then we just dived in. And yeah, I think it's kind of good that we did it like this, because I think it's harder if you plan everything ahead and then be aware of all the struggles. So now we learn by doing, we grow with it, but we also have to see how long we can do it like this. But yeah, let's see.
Sure. Keep my fingers crossed for as long as you want to be doing it.
Yeah.
Keeping my fingers crossed. But I find that really also very surprising, the feedback that you got about needing to be sexier yourselves. Have you all also experienced any like weird or surprising? Yeah.
No, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing. And a lot of people get these like weird LinkedIn DMs where it's like a little bit sexualized. Yeah, it's like it's a thing. My personal example was I went through this phase where I wanted to make paddles. I still kind of want to make paddles, and I had this inspiration to use what are they, hurling bats, like the Irish sport hurling, because they have
Girl, what? Like, I gotta Google this after the fact to figure out what this is, but yeah.
I'm telling about my life right now. So anyway, so they basically are a precision sport bat that you can like pinpoint where things go. And I was like, this is perfect. Like, stop laughing. This made sense. Gosh, I realized this story is actually a lot more X-rated than I realized. So I'm gonna just erase it. But the punchline was that the person, I'll tell you off mic the actual story. Anywho, so basically the guy who ended up, he already made bats as like a professional for the actual sport. And I wrote him and say, hey, can we adapt these for bodies? And for circumstances I will explain later, he started coming on to me. And it was just like, why are we doing this here? Like, this is a business transaction. It's a business email. This is a business situation. I thought we were on the same page. And I had to just like ghost him. And so it was just like, immediately it switches. And that's actually why my name is Lex and not Alex anymore. And not Alexandria. But like that started from that exact interaction where I'm like, I need you not to know who I am from my name. You know, and now I'm bald and like if I don't smile, I look kind of militant. So it's kind of working for me.
But I find that always a bit sad, right? Because I even know for myself, like you do get LinkedIn DMs, which for me, I was like, really? And I can't imagine what it's like for all of you working, like building companies in the pleasure space, because I could imagine people maybe feel like it's even more okay for them to behave that way. But I'm always shocked if there's a LinkedIn DM and I'm like, oh, LinkedIn of all places. Or someone who feigns interest as if they would like to help you find funding or help your company. Then you come to find out not too long after he has an ulterior motive. And I'm just like, and this is a shame because it's changed my behavior completely in like work environments and interacting with men in general and how I like, for example, I just, because I know I can be cutesier when I speak in German because I'm a little bit more shy and I'm not as comfortable. So I'm really like sweet when I speak German. Business, I don't speak German now, period. Because I know I can be a lot crasser, harder, stronger in English and I get more respect. And then I'm not nice. I don't do small talk anymore with some people because I just don't feel comfortable because I've had enough experiences now where if I'm too friendly, somehow it's no longer about business. It becomes about getting to know each other.
What if you didn't change? And I told you this is my whole thought exercise for the year. But what if you didn't? And like build up a different way of doing things.
I think I've been in it for so long now that I would probably have to relearn how to just be myself again. And that's where I would love to like understand also for your experiences. Have you had similar experiences yourself or have you been okay?
Honestly did not have any experience like that so far, luckily. I think, I also really, or I'm convinced that I'm the right person to talk about heyyoli and about like our "It's my pleasure" slogan and so on, and to really make people also comfortable talking with me about it. And it's one thing I notice is I super spontaneously decide how to talk about heyyoli or address a topic depending on the person I talk to. And it's so surprisingly how these conversations end up then. But so far, I'm very grateful that I only had like good experiences. And also like, like a lot of support when it comes to, oh, like, that's great. I haven't heard about that yet. Like, oh yeah, that's so much needed and so on. I mean, that's another topic because everyone's just like, yeah.
Yeah, and they don't give you even money.
Just like, move on, do it. Well, come on, make a move.
Yeah.
But at least, at least for me, it's more about like, great, now you've heard about heyyoli, now you've heard about like pleasure can be so much more than having or reaching a goal.
Sure.
And this already like satisfies me in a way of like, yes, great, keep on going. Yeah.
That's so good. That makes me really happy to hear because it does feel like, okay, there's hope, there's a shift happening, it's getting better. So that's also really refreshing to hear. And was there anything you guys wanted to add as well? All right.
So just to start positive, we also mostly 90% of the time have positive feedback. And also we're often very surprised by the amount of support we often get from men. Not in a sexual or not in a weird way, but often sometimes we feel like it's even in like a female founder space where there's more of like, oh, there's not enough space at the table, so people aren't nice to you. That's a whole other topic, yeah. And it's often women that are the ones that are doubting you, or that are the ones that are like, oh, well, I'm also in this space, like, or like, there's a lot of like that in there as well. So there has been a lot of very great support from men. but there's also been some weird conversations. And I think we often get asked about our very personal motivations and our personal experiences, why we needed to that product, and how much do we use it, and how much like use cases like, oh well, how much lube is it for like one time, like for you personally. Like it's always like, I don't think you'd be asking a tech founder like all of these personal motivation questions. I just don't think you would.
Why did you decide to build this SaaS product?
Exactly. Why are you
like,
doing
What's your personal?
yeah.
Yeah. I think we've had a couple of weird experiences in that sense, unfortunately, but I think it's bound to happen. But we've learned from it, and I think we've just needed to like learn some like cool like come back slogans or sentences on how to like stop someone in their tracks to do it. But yeah, especially we started
also comments about appearance sometimes, right? We had this too. So it was actually strange to hear from this investor that she said we should be more sexy, because actually we try to not overplay it, to be more safe, because we also had some comments from like men like thinking, oh, all you need to be is like sexy, or
so maybe just obviously we want to come off as especially professional, even though obviously we also have everyone has their sexual side. So I think it's something that we're learning, how to be your personal self, and you can be a sexual being and you can still be a professional boss ass woman. But just having this obviously for us as like a protective sheath to be like, okay, I don't want any comments about, especially from males, just being like, oh, thinking that like, oh, you must be maybe like nymphos if you do something like that, or exactly saying like, oh, your product will do fine, your company will do fine just because, I mean, you're a sexy woman, you can do it. And then you have other people that are like, oh, well, sex sells, you should like bring it to the like on the nose, be super sexy, and that's how you get it. And it's just, that's exhausting, that whole conversation, because I think in other spaces, I think you don't have that.
For sure. But what I do want to like, because we're getting towards the end of the conversation now as well, is ending it on a positive note. And one of the things that was really positive to me about starting and building is just also how open everyone is to helping you and like giving advice. And for the most part, if anyone I've asked for a coffee chat to talk quickly, 15 minutes, pitch deck run through, give me ideas, has been super open. That's been a really positive experience. And so I would always say to anyone who wants to start their own company, literally just start and ask everyone. Don't hide your secret. Just put it out there so everyone talks. I wanted to ask each of you as well, what for any founder, like I said, the people who've asked about this episode, who's aspiring to build a company within the space, what would you say to them? What's one thing that's positive that stood out to you? As you wish.
I think really everyone's willing to help. And I think if you ask anyone, hey, like I have this idea, I have this question, I think you're amazing, I'd love to hear your insights, pretty much no one says no, because it also strokes their ego so they feel good afterwards as well. And I think like if you have something and you believe in it, you're going to find ways to make it happen. I think all of us are finding ways to make it happen. And it can be such a loving community. I think we've also started like doing educational events and like invited speakers and have this open, safe discussion space. And like every time afterwards, I want to cry happy tears because I'm like, wow, like everyone wants to share and wants to know and is here for the education and is here for it. And I think that's just something that if you're doing something good, people will know it and feel it and want to help you.
Yeah.
And I think also you learn by doing. You don't have to be perfect and to just start. You learn by doing. Just start and you will learn.
100%. No need to plan excessively. Agreed. Yeah.
And also don't be afraid to make mistakes because they happen. And you also just grow if you make the mistakes. And you'll be much stronger after. And I think the whole ride is such a great experience. But again, you need to be also quite strong and take care of yourself. I think this is super, super important. It's so funny, I always say, because with heyyoli building a well-being company, but it is also, of course, sometimes super challenging. But I think taking care of yourself is super important during building a startup.
Yeah, +1. Definitely exercise, eat right.
Yeah, and figure out what is important for you. Just make sure that you're good.
Yeah. for sure, yeah. Then I'll go to practical stuff. If you're looking to enter the sex space, probably one of the resources you should go to is obviously Sex Tech School with Brian Nicole. She also has the Sex Tech newsletter where she curates jobs across the space. But the newsletter covers like latest news that is happening in the space, different players in the space who are looking for new hires, da 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 da. Sex Tech School she also runs, which is basically, I would call it a pre-accelerator. It's good resources to get kind of to test if you actually want to do it, if you're not entirely sure. And yeah, so check that out. Here in Europe, Monique, I forget her last name.
Oh, she's amazing.
And she does a sex tech mixer, and then I think she's doing like this come together collective or something like this.
Cool.
And she runs, I mean, she's
You're grabbing your phone like
yeah, I can actually intro you to these people. We are physically in the same space. I will do the connect. Yeah, she's awesome. She's building a community across Europe, which is really interesting. Go to trade shows and just have a look around. You will be shocked by how much opportunity there is there because it's not there yet. So yeah, those are my practical industry tools.
That was amazing. That's really helpful, and I'm so grateful. Thank you all so much for joining me, dealing with the mishap with the tech in the beginning, being so open, and like this was really fun. So thank you for being my first Founders Roundtable and joining me as well.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Yes. I love this. Well, there you have it, folks. That's the episode, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it just about as much as I enjoyed having this conversation with these outstanding women who are transforming an industry. And as you heard in the episode, if you're interested in building a company in this space, go for it. There are a ton of opportunities, resources, and an amazing supportive community who are happy to back you up. And with that being said, be sure to like, follow, subscribe to On the Up and Up. And as always, I'll be back with another episode very soon. So until then, onwards and upwards, y'all, and I'll speak to you soon.